Hey, got a quick question for you. It's Thought Leader Thursday, and I want to talk to you about what phase or what mode is your business in. Question I have for you though is, have you ever wondered if your team was secretly plotting against you? The truth is, they are. Well, they aren't, but their brains are. So, has this ever happened to you? You give your team direction, you expect them to execute on that direction, but then they return to you and they say they didn't understand what you wanted, or they say they thought you meant this or that, or they say they didn't have enough time. Now, that's an excuse, and you know it is. And in your mind, you're thinking, I thought you understood me. I thought we had agreed on what was to be done, but you didn't get what you wanted. Does that sound familiar? Does that happen to you? Has that happened to you? Well, that's because each one of your team members is already programmed to believe certain things, programmed to do things a certain way, programmed to hear things a certain way, and more importantly, programmed to not hear things a certain way. It's not personal. It's their brains. It's it's human. So even though it sounds like I'm talking about a bunch of robots, the human brain is kind of robotic. It's programmed to do things just to stay alive. That is its job. That is the brain's only job. And in order for it to stay alive and do its job, it goes towards familiar and away from unfamiliar, even if the unfamiliar thing is beneficial. That's why doing the same thing, expecting a different result, isn't the definition of humanity. If it isn't the definition of insanity, it's the definition of humanity. We all do it. We all do the same thing, expecting a different result. This is called survivor mode. There are three modes your brain can go into to stay alive. Now, there could be more, but we've broken it down to these modes that happen most often, especially in business. You're either in survivor mode, striver mode, or thriver mode. But it's important to note different generations are programmed differently. So even if you're in survivor mode, you might show up differently as a Gen Xer or a baby boomer than you do as a millennial. And when you're in survivor mode, baby boomers were programmed to save, hoard, keep their heads down and work hard and just, make it happen, survive. Gen Xers were programmed to survive by spending money. This was like finally we get to enjoy life by having access, just a lot, overload. Getting educated, several degrees. This is how Gen Xers survive. And they got educated so they didn't have to work as hard, but they still had the hard work mentality. They are programmed to get permission to do things, and they kind of follow the rules, being latchkey kids that they were. So millennials were programmed to do it themselves. They are do-it-yourselfers, and they don't rely on society's ideas. They educate themselves. They build their own. They don't ask for permission. They might ask for forgiveness, maybe. They ignore the rules and they redefine themselves, and they do it together. So this current generation is programmed to have it their way, and instantly they want it all. They want money, they want influence, they want impact, they want peace of mind, and they're not willing to compromise on any of that. They and they're not willing to wait. So you better give it to them, and you better give it to them now. That is what they consider survivor mode. You already know you have different generations on your team, and you know they function differently, but maybe you've never heard it described quite that way. But what you may not realize also is that each team member may be in a different phase based on what's happening in their personal life. So not only might you have Gen Xers, baby boomers, and this current Gen Y and Gen Z working in your office, but they may all be in different modes. Some are in survivor mode, some are in striver mode, some are in thriver mode. And then where is the company? So every single one of your team members, no matter what generational programming they have already been in or decided they're in either survivor mode, striver mode, or thriver mode. And it's based on what's happening in their personal life, not anything that's happening at your company. And sometimes something else that happens is you'll have to realize that doesn't matter whether they are Gen Xers, baby boomers, or Gen Y. Once they get into survivor mode, you need to understand that. But if the company is not there, that's most important. That now they're out of line. They're not in line with where the company is. So where's your company? Is your company in survivor mode? Is your company in striver mode? Or is in thriver mode? And this is depending on what's going on inside the company, right? But also what's going on inside your industry, what's going on inside the world. Let me break it down a little bit more so that you understand each mode and can determine not only where your company is, but also where the individual team members fall. So remember, if your team members are in survivor mode, they can't hear you because they are trying to stay alive by staying the same, doing the same thing, not changing, moving very slowly, keeping their heads down, doing the minimum so that they can preserve their energy. That's survivor mode. If your team members are in striver mode, they can't hear you. They are trying to stay alive by racing to the top, moving very quickly, competing for the trophy, chasing the American dream, collecting titles and material things. If they're if your team members are in thriver mode, they can't hear you because they're trying to stay alive because they're focused on making an impact and contributing to the world. They believe life is about more than money. It's about meaning, and creating a meaningful life is what is keeping them alive. The titles, the material things, and the winning, none of that is important to them anymore. Doing the same thing is not important to them anymore. They are questioning themselves. They are questioning the society. They might even be questioning the company, what's right and wrong. So whether you're the leader on the leadership team or part of the contributing team, you're likely in one of these phases. In survivor mode, doing the minimum to stay alive. In striver mode, trying to get to the top to stay alive. Or in thriver mode, trying to find meaning in your work or life to stay alive. So throughout your organization, the team members fall into these categories, and the company falls into these categories. So, which phase would you say your company is in? Is your company in survivor mode, just trying to make payroll and keep the lights on? Is your company in striver mode, trying to dominate your competition? Or is your company in thriver mode, trying to make a difference and contribute to the world? Think about it. Because no matter where your company is, if you're running a remote team, there are three things you need to do to lead well, not perfect, to run your remote team effectively. Remember, you're leading well because trying to lead perfect, you're probably going to get that wrong. So let's talk about what that looks like. To really be effective, you need to manage change and shifts in the company gently, especially if you're in survivor mode. You determine what success looks like and how it's rewarded, especially for your strivers. And you keep your company vision the highest priority. And you do this for your thrivers. So I'll break these down more in just a moment. But I want to tell you first how I know this so well. And I'm just going to take just a few more minutes and then we're going to wrap this up. I'm so glad you spent the last part of your day with me. I've decided to dedicate my life to alleviating human suffering associated with mental health. And so for the last 12 years, I've been coaching, training, consulting, and speaking to CEOs that are leaders and all over the world. So 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 2 years before the pandemic, I created a subscription-based online practice, and I began educating other CEOs on the importance of embracing a remote or a hybrid team. And I shared the subscription model with other therapists. So that's how I kind of make a name for myself. And for a while, I was ignored, but I knew I was right. So I kept talking about it and talking about it. And then the pandemic happened, and CEOs became more curious about this subject. So they wanted to talk more about being remote and being hybrid and how to keep their employees engaged. And so my partner and I created Clarity, and it's an employee engagement and mental health system. And through that, Clarity is an all in one system that allows companies to collect, analyze, and utilize data to track employee engagement, suggest solutions, offer in app mental health support, and also show how you progress. Is this working? What now that we see some of the challenges and we put some of these things in action, oh, look how we've changed. All of that is done in the app. So whether you do it through Clarity or someplace else, you'll need to manage your remote team effectively to see if they are engaged, to keep them engaged, to retain them, and to make sure you support them in mental health because there's a lot of burnout happening right now. And in order to do that, you have to manage that change and the shifts in the company for the survivors. And if your organization is in survivor mode, your team is likely scared and sending they're in fight or flight mode, and they can't follow in fight or flight mode. They're kind of almost like frozen in time, and they're just waiting for just to know that they'll be okay for safety. So to manage the team members in survivor mode, you really need to take your time, slowly roll out change. Don't try every new idea that you have. And trust me, I know because I have a lot of good ideas, but become before you make a change, just start to listen to feedback. Become a master question asker. Let them know that you are listening to them. If you and your team are in striver mode, however, determine what success looks like and how it's rewarded. If your company is in striver mode, then you'll need to a team of champions, people who are going to drop everything for the bottom line, who are trying to get to the top, dominate. And if you don't have that, if your team members are in survivor mode, they're not looking at climbing to the top of the mountain, and they'll need to know what obstacles in the way, whether if they're in striver mode, and they also need to know what success looks like. Otherwise, they'll start competing with each other if it's unclear what success looked like. And instead of dominating the industry or dominating the competition, they'll start to dominate each other, which means that the business starts to implode. If your company is in thriver mode, your highest priority is likely making a contribution or impact. When the midlife questioning comes, your team members, they are going to wonder what is the meaning in life? What are we doing? Why am I here? There's going to start asking some really deep questions, and you're going to have some answers for them. And your vision helps you get those answers. If you want to manage the thrivers, they will need help choosing your cause, having that North Star to keep them focused and on the path to what we call the path to prosperity, but knowing they're making a contribution. So the next step you want to take is making sure you're aligning your team with your vision so they are ready for change and able to move with the company based on where the company is going, the vision you're seeing. And you can have weekly and daily reminders of this. Don't stop hiring. Don't stop talking about your vision in the hiring process. You've got to talk about it over and over and over again. Keep it going. In order for you to do that, you must be perfectly clear on what that vision is. Be able to articulate it to your team. Repeat it loudly and proudly and often. When you share your clear vision with your team, It helps if you understand how their work helps to bring that vision to life, because then you can bring them in and make them feel included. It takes it takes away the fear that they have that they won't survive there at the company. And it gives the ambitious people direction and purpose. When this is in place, they no longer, or they not only begin to listen to you more, they will execute on your requests and even begin to manage themselves. And that feels good. So before I go, I just want to say that I know that I have given you a lot of information, and I'm telling you, I've posed some problems, right? But there's still so much more for us to discuss. And if you want to discuss more, then what I say is first determine where your business is: survivor mode, striver mode, or thriver mode. And the next thing that I invite you to do is to join our community, our free community. The link is in the description. You and I can have deep conversations, but not just you and I, the whole community. There are other people there that can give you insight on where you, if you're in striver mode, what it was like when they were in striver mode, or if you're in survivor mode, what it was like when they were in survivor mode. All of this is discussed in the community and more. So go ahead and click the link in the description so that you and I and the community can have really deep conversations about where we're going, especially if you have a remote or hybrid team. Because you may have forgotten your vision. You may have let your vision get away from you. Being part of this community can bring you back in line with your vision. So now might be a good time to really hone in on your vision. If you've gotten away from it, forgotten it, or maybe you never even had one, you can create one now. So, what would it feel like to know your vision? Get clear on that vision. Know yourself, know your team, and be able to give them the tools they need to serve your vision properly. What would that feel like? But you're not far away, and it's happening for you. And if you come back to Thought Leader Thursday, every Thursday, we have Mental Health Monday here as well. Um, and a lot of other tools and resources. I'll start to interview other people, maybe even you, if you want to be one of those people. Send me a private message. I want to hear from you. But most importantly, jump into the community, because I do a lot of interaction there. And I'll find out who you are and get to know you, and then we can talk more. So I will see you sooner. Thank you for spending your evening with me.